In the vast expanse of space, where countless civilizations had risen and fallen, there existed a governing body known as the Galactic Council. For millennia, they had maintained order among the stars, carefully documenting and classifying every species they encountered. But nothing could have prepared them for what happened during the most recent first contact ceremony with the newly discovered humans. The council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to witness the introduction of humanity's ambassador. The massive crystalline dome above reflected the light of 3 suns, casting rainbow-colored shadows across the worried faces of the assembled delegates. At the center of attention stood the council's prized possession, the fearsome Void Stalker, a creature so deadly that even its handlers wore protective suits reinforced with quantum-hardened alloys. The Void Stalker, a massive feline-like predator with obsidian scales and eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies, had been captured at great cost. 15 of the galaxy's best hunters had died securing it for the Council's menagerie of dangerous creatures. Its mere presence was enough to silence the usually chattering chambers, as everyone knew a single swipe of its crystalline claws could slice through battleship armor. The human ambassador, a short, unassuming woman with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes, approached the chamber's center with the casual confidence of someone taking a morning stroll. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, mandibles clicking and tentacles writhing with anxiety. They had, of course, warned her about the Void Stalker. They had shown her the footage of it demolishing an entire space station. They had explained, in great detail, why even getting within 10 meters of it was considered suicidal. She had smiled, nodded politely, and then proceeded to completely ignore every single warning. "Oh, aren't you just the most beautiful thing?" Her voice echoed through the dead-silent chamber as she walked straight up to the containment field. The Void Stalker's eyes locked onto her, its pupils dilating as it assessed its prey. The guards reached for their weapons, and several council members began drafting urgent evacuation orders. What happened next would be recorded in the council's archives as the moment they realized humans were either the bravest or the most insane species they had ever encountered. To everyone's horror and amazement, the ambassador didn't just approach the galaxy's deadliest predator. She did something that made even the most seasoned council members faint dead away in their seats. She reached out to scratch it behind its ears. The entire chamber held its breath, waiting for the inevitable bloodbath. But sometimes, the universe has a way of surprising even those who think they've seen it all. The Void Stalker's response would forever change how the galaxy viewed both the fearsome predator and the peculiar species known as humans. The massive predator's muscles tensed, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to freeze. Then, to the astonishment of every being present, the Void Stalker leaned into the ambassador's touch. A sound unlike anything the council had ever heard rumbled through the chamber, something between a purr and the harmonic resonance of a neutron star. High Counselor Zixtal, their crystalline form shimmering with disbelief, gripped their ceremonial staff so tightly it began to crack. "Impossible," they whispered, their voice carrying through the perfect acoustics of the chamber. "In 3,000 years of documented encounters, no being has ever." The ambassador continued scratching, finding a particularly sensitive spot that made the Void Stalker's 4 eyes close in apparent bliss. "You're just a big softy, aren't you?" she cooed, completely oblivious to the historical significance of the moment. "Someone just needed to show you a little kindness." From their elevated platform, Council Security Chief Vreenkut triggered their neural implants, running a 7th diagnostic on the containment field. "The barriers are still active," they reported, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "She shouldn't even be able to reach through them." A junior researcher, their tentacles wrapped tightly around a data pad, finally worked up the courage to speak. "Actually, the readings suggest the Void Stalker's own bioelectric field is harmonizing with the barrier. It's as if it's choosing to allow the contact." The ambassador had now moved on to scratching under the creature's chin, causing its iridescent scales to ripple with pleasure. "You know," she said conversationally, addressing the stunned council, "back on Earth, we have a saying. There are no bad creatures, just ones that haven't been understood properly." Several council members exchanged meaningful glances. They had reviewed humanity's historical records during first contact preparations. Earth was a death world by galactic standards, teeming with predators that would give even seasoned xenobiologists nightmares. Perhaps that explained the ambassador's seemingly suicidal bravery. Or was it merely that humans possessed some deeper understanding of predatory creatures that had eluded the rest of the galaxy? The Void Stalker suddenly shifted, causing several guards to raise their weapons. But instead of attacking, it simply rolled onto its side, exposing its armored belly in a display that sent shockwaves through the xenobiological community. The ambassador, naturally, took this as an invitation for belly rubs. "I need to contact the archival mines immediately," whispered an elderly council member, their bioluminescent spots pulsing with excitement. This completely revolutionizes our understanding of apex predator psychology. If humans can communicate with such creatures. High Counselor Zixtal raised a crystalline appendage for silence. They had just noticed something that sent shivers through their mineral matrix. The ambassador wasn't alone anymore. Through the chamber's main entrance, another human was casually strolling in, carrying what appeared to be some kind of primitive string toy. "Sorry I'm late," the newcomer called out cheerfully, "but I brought Mr. Whisker's favorite toy. You wouldn't believe how long it took to find something sturdy enough for those claws." The council chambers erupted into chaos as the implications sank in. Had the humans somehow managed to domesticate a void stalker? And more importantly, had they named it Mr. Whiskers? Before anyone could restore order, the massive predator caught sight of the dangling toy. Its pupils widened, tail beginning to twitch in a way that made the security chief consider retirement. The galaxy's deadliest hunter, terror of the void between stars, was about to show the council yet another side of itself, and the humans seemed to think this was perfectly normal. The second human, a tall man with weather-worn features that spoke of years spent outdoors, began swinging the reinforced toy in a gentle arc. The Void Stalker's 4 eyes tracked it with laser-like precision, its massive body coiling like a spring. The security teams were now in complete disarray. Their training had never covered what to do if someone started playing with their most dangerous captive. "I still remember when we first found him," the ambassador explained to the stunned council, continuing to scratch the creature's scales as if this were a perfectly normal conversation. "Poor thing had crashed on Earth during a meteor shower. We thought he was just another space rock until my daughter's cat walked right up to him and started grooming his wounds." The Void Stalker suddenly pounced, not at anyone, but at the dangling toy. Its movement was so fast that half the council members didn't even see it. They just felt the impact as the creature's multi-ton body landed with surprising grace. The chamber's reinforced floor creaked under the pressure, but the Void Stalker seemed focused entirely on batting at the toy with its planet crusher paws. "Fascinating," muttered one of the xenobiologists, frantically recording data. "The hunting instincts are clearly present, but the lethal force is deliberately restrained. It's exhibiting play behavior identical to Earth's domestic felines, just on a cosmic scale." High Counselor Zixtal finally found their voice. "You mean to tell us that the most feared predator in known space, the destroyer of the Centaurian battle fleet, the terror that emptied the Carina sector, crashed on your planet, and you treated it like a common house pet?" "Well, not common," the man with the toy chuckled, expertly keeping it just out of the Void Stalker's reach. "Do you know how much we spent on his food? And finding a litter box that size was a real challenge, let me tell you." Several council members fainted at the casual mention of a litter box for a creature that had previously been documented consuming small moons. Others began frantically calculating the implications for their xenobiology textbooks. One particularly forward-thinking trade representative was already drafting a proposal for exclusive rights to human-approved pet supplies. But the real shock came when the chamber's emergency alarms suddenly blared to life. Red lights pulsed as a holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing a massive warship dropping out of hyperspace directly above the council station. The vessel's design was unmistakable. It belonged to the Ravagers, a militant species that had been terrorizing the outer sectors for decades. The Void Stalker's playful demeanor vanished instantly. Its scales bristled, and a low growl resonated through the chamber at a frequency that made several crystalline beings develop cracks. But instead of panicking, the ambassador simply scratched behind its ears again and whispered something that the Council's universal translators struggled to parse, something about protecting his humans. As the Ravager ship's weapons powered up and their demands for surrender blasted through every communication channel, the two humans exchanged a knowing look. The ambassador stepped back, straightening her diplomatic robes, while her companion pocketed the toy with a resigned sigh. Well, she addressed the Council, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been present before. It seems we'll have to demonstrate another interesting fact about Earth's approach to apex predators. She turned to the Void Stalker, whose eyes were now fixed on the holographic display of the Ravager ship. "Would you like to go for a walk, Mr. Whiskers?" The creature's response, and the events that followed, would force the Galactic Council to rewrite not just their biology texts, but their entire understanding of both predator-prey relationships and the seemingly unassuming species called humans. The Void Stalker's response came in the form of a purr that shattered every piece of glassware in the council chamber. As security alarms blared and evacuation protocols initiated, the massive creature padded over to the ambassador with all the dignity of a house cat answering its owner's call. The sight of the galaxy's deadliest predator acting like an oversized house cat might have been comical if not for the growing crisis above. "Now hold on just one moment." High Counselor Zixtel's voice cut through the chaos. "You can't possibly be suggesting. I mean, the containment protocols, the safety regulations." They trailed off as the ambassador pulled what appeared to be a simple leather collar from her diplomatic pouch. "Oh, don't worry about those," she said, fastening the collar around the Void Stalker's neck with practiced ease. "Mr. Whiskers is very well trained. Aren't you, sweetheart?" The creature's response was to nuzzle her hand with a snout that could crush battleship armor. But just as the ambassador reached for what looked suspiciously like a leash, the chamber's main doors burst open. A group of figures in sleek combat armor stormed in, their weapons trained on the humans. Their leader, a tall being with chrome-plated scales, stepped forward. How fortunate! The newcomer's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. The famous human ambassador and her pet, right where our intelligence said they would be. Though I must admit, we expected more resistance. The being's helmet retracted, revealing the distinctive features of a Ravager infiltrator. The council members withdrew in horror. A Ravager strike team here. In the heart of galactic governance. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a random attack, but a carefully orchestrated coup. "You see," the Ravager continued, "we'd spent years studying your precious Void Stalker, its weaknesses, its patterns, its potential as a weapon, but we could never get close enough, until you humans showed us exactly how it could be done." The ambassador's expression remained unnervingly calm. "Is that what you think this is? A technique? A method to control him?" She shook her head slowly. "You really don't understand at all, do you?" The Ravager commander laughed. "Understand? We understand perfectly. Your species has some primitive empathic ability that lets you tame beasts. We've already synthesized it. That ship up there, it's carrying enough of the synthetic hormone to control every apex predator in the sector." Actually, the ambassador's companion spoke up, still casually holding the toy. "You might want to rethink your math there. You see, you're working on the assumption that we tamed Mr. Whiskers." He paused, sharing a knowing look with the ambassador. "Thing is, it's more accurate to say he adopted us." The Void Stalker, who had been sitting peacefully throughout this exchange, suddenly stood. Its scales began to shimmer with an inner light that none of the council's records had ever documented. But more disturbing was the way it looked at the Ravager troops, not with predatory hunger, but with something that looked almost like disappointment. "You want to know the real secret?" the ambassador asked, her hand resting gently on the creature's flank. "Why Earth's cats let us pet them? Why Mr. Whiskers here chose to be our companion? It's not about control at all. It's about—" She never finished her sentence. At that moment, the Ravager ship above fired its first shot at the council station, and Mr. Whiskers did something that would redefine the galaxy's understanding of not just Void Stalkers, but of the true nature of humanity's relationship with the cosmos. As the first energy blast from the Ravager ship struck the station's shields, Mr. Whisker's body began to phase shift, his scales rippling like the surface of a black hole. The Ravager troops raised their weapons, but their commander's confident smirk had already begun to fade. Something was very, very wrong with their calculations. The thing about cats, the ambassador continued calmly, as if she weren't in the middle of an invasion, is that they don't serve anyone. They choose their family. And when you threaten their family, she gestured to the massive viewing screen where the Ravager ship hung in space. Well, let's just say there's a reason Earth cats were once worshipped as guardians. Mr. Whiskers stood up, his form growing larger with each step. The quantum-reinforced floor cracked beneath his paws as he moved between the humans and the Ravager troops. But instead of attacking, he did something far more terrifying. He began to purr. This wasn't the gentle rumble from before. This was the sound of galaxies colliding, of stars being born and dying, of space itself vibrating in sympathy. The Ravager commander's synthetic confidence shattered. Fire. Fire everything. They screamed, but their weapons seemed to pass straight through the Void Stalker's now ethereal form. The creature's 4 eyes had become swirling vortexes of cosmic energy, and when it opened its mouth, the void itself seemed to pour out. You know, the ambassador's companion mused, still fiddling with the toy in his pocket. We always wondered why he spent so much time watching our house cats hunt. Turns out he was learning from them. Earth cats don't just chase their prey. He paused as Mr. Whiskers' form suddenly vanished, leaving only a ripple in space-time. They play with it first. On the view screen, chaos erupted aboard the Ravager ship. Mr. Whiskers would appear in one section, swat the ship's engines like a cat batting a mouse, then vanish before their weapons could lock on. He reappeared near their weapons array, playfully batting at their main gun until it crumpled like paper. All the while, that cosmic purr echoed through space itself, a sound that would haunt the Ravager species' nightmares for generations to come. The infiltrators in the chamber threw down their weapons and surrendered as they watched their mighty warship being treated like a ball of yarn by the galaxy's deadliest predator. The council members stared in awe as Mr. Whiskers systematically disabled the threat without causing a single casualty, just a thoroughly humiliated Ravager crew and a ship that now looked like it had been used as a scratching post. Finally, with one last playful swat that sent the powerless Ravager ship spinning safely away from the station, Mr. Whiskers reappeared in the chamber. His form shrank back to its normal size, still massive by any standards, but no longer cosmic in scale. He padded over to the ambassador, rubbed against her legs like any house cat seeking praise, then flopped over for a belly rub. "Good boy," she said, obliging him while addressing the stunned council. "We didn't tame him. We didn't need to. On Earth, we learned long ago that the most powerful relationships aren't built on control or dominance. They're built on respect, trust," and she smiled as Mr. Whiskers started purring again, this time at a frequency that only caused minor structural damage, lots of belly rubs. High Counselor Zixtal, their crystalline form still vibrating from the cosmic purr, finally spoke. "I believe we may need to revise our first contact protocols, and perhaps establish a committee for galactic pet adoption standards." They paused, watching as the ambassador's companion pulled out the toy again, causing the most feared being in the galaxy to perk up like an excited kitten. Though I suspect humanity may need to lead that particular initiative. As the council chambers erupted into excited discussion about the implications of this new understanding, Mr. Whiskers caught the toy in mid-pounce and settled down to play, completely unconcerned with how he had just revolutionized galactic society. After all, he was just doing what any good Earth cat would do, protecting his humans, playing with his toys, and maintaining that air of casual superiority that convinced ancient Egyptians that cats were gods. And as for the humans, well, they just smiled knowingly, because if there's one thing humanity had learned over millennia of living with cats, it's that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or weapons, or even cosmic energy. Sometimes it's just knowing exactly where to scratch. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council found itself dealing with an unprecedented surge of interest from every corner of the cosmos. The story of Mr. Whiskers and his humans spread faster than light speed through the galactic communication networks, prompting a flood of diplomatic requests from species who had never before shown interest in Earth. The Ravagers, thoroughly humbled by their encounter, submitted a formal apology along with a gift, a massive space station they had converted into what they called a cosmic scratching post. Mr. Whiskers appreciated the gesture, though he still preferred the cardboard boxes the ambassador's children sent from Earth. During a private session with the Council's xenobiologists, the ambassador finally explained how Earth had become home to not just one, but several void stalkers who had crashed there over the millennia. They were never invading, she explained, watching Mr. Whiskers bat around a meteorite like a tennis ball. They were following our cat's signals. Something about Earth Feline's purring frequency acts like a beacon to them. We think they might be distant cousins, evolutionarily speaking. The Council established the Interstellar Pet Partnership Program, with Earth taking the lead in teaching other species about the art of companion bonds. Humanity's expertise with cats proved invaluable in helping other civilizations understand that the most fearsome creatures in the universe sometimes just needed a gentle touch and respect for their boundaries. Mr. Whiskers became something of a celebrity, though he remained thoroughly unimpressed by his fame. He continued his diplomatic duties alongside the ambassador, helping to negotiate peace treaties simply by falling asleep in the middle of tense negotiations, because no one, not even warring species, wanted to risk disturbing a napping void stalker. The Ravagers' synthetic empathy hormone research was quietly abandoned after it was discovered that their test subjects were just pretending to be affected to get extra treats. As the ambassador noted, you can't fake a relationship with a cat, no matter what size they are. Perhaps the most significant change came in how the galaxy viewed Earth itself. What they had dismissed as a backwater death world was now recognized as the only planet that had figured out one of the universe's greatest mysteries, that true power doesn't come from controlling the forces of nature, but from building bonds of trust with them. As for Mr. Whiskers, he continued doing what cats across time and space have always done, absolutely whatever he wanted. Though now, when he knocked things off high surfaces, those things tended to be space stations. The ambassador made sure his favorite toy was always packed for diplomatic missions, and the council chambers kept a supply of Earth-imported catnip, carefully contained in quantum-sealed containers after an incident involving 3 solar systems and an extremely euphoric void stalker. And every evening, regardless of which sector of space they were in, Mr. Whiskers would curl up next to his humans, purring contentedly as they watched the stars together. In the end, the galaxy learned what Earth had known for thousands of years, that sometimes the fiercest predators make the best friends, that love and respect trump control and fear, and that no matter where you go in the universe, everything is better with a cat by your side, even if that cat happens to be able to use black holes as yarn balls. The Council eventually added a new section to their first contact protocols. When encountering new species, first check if they have cats. If they do, assume they're more advanced than they appear. Below this, someone, though no one would admit who, had scribbled a much simpler note, and always keep treats handy, just in case.